Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into sandals, ducking under a reed roof, and waking up in a place where the sun rules everything, and even your morning breath could summon a curse. You're in ancient Egypt, right around 1300 BCE, and from the moment your eyes flutter open, you're already in trouble. The air is thick with dust and sweat. It's barely dawn, but the heat is already whispering promises of misery. Mosquitoes hum around your head, and something in the corner of the room might be a spider or a scorpion. You don't check. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in from somewhere special, post your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where we all are in the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake on a low pallet stuffed with straw and wrapped in a linen sheet that smells faintly of old barley. There's no pillow, just a curved wooden headrest that somehow makes your neck feel worse than if you'd slept standing. Around you, the small room is dim and airless, the mud brick walls holding in last night's heat like a stubborn oven. Through a slatted window, a grayish morning light begins to stretch across the Nile Valley. The moment you sit up, your feet land on a packed dirt floor covered in yesterday's dust. You yawn, stretch, and remember, oh right, there's no toothbrush. Not unless you count chewing on a twig dipped in natron salt. Your mouth tastes like you ate a sandcastle in your sleep. Outside your room, the sounds of goats bleating and a neighbor hacking phlegm into the street let you know the day's already begun. Your mother, or possibly your wife or grandmother, it's hard to tell in this household, calls out in a sing-song voice to grind more grain for breakfast. You mumble something vaguely respectful and step into the shared courtyard, blinking against the sun that's already too bright for this hour. Your home is basic: mud brick walls, a flat roof, and a small shrine to a household god. In the corner, probably, Bess the Squat, little protector of sleep and childbirth. His wide eyes seem to mock you as you splash cold water from a clay jar onto your face. It helps, a little. Your stomach grumbles, but you know better than to hope for much. Breakfast in ancient Egypt is humble. There's likely some leftover beer, more like a sour, chunky barley smoothie, and flatbread as tough as a cartwheel. You might get a smear of fig paste if you're lucky, or a piece of dried fish. If you're unlucky, there are ants in the bread, and the fish is mostly bones. You try to eat without chewing too hard. Why? Because sand gets everywhere. Your bread was baked in an outdoor clay oven, and even the best baker can't keep Nile dust out of the dough. Over time, the grit wears down your teeth. Most adult skulls found from this period show teeth ground nearly flat. Historians still argue whether this dental decay led to wider health problems, but one thing's certain: your molars are crying. Someone nearby is already coughing. Could be a cold, or just the smoke from yesterday's cooking fire still lingering in the air. Most homes don't have chimneys, so the soot stains the walls and your lungs in equal measure. You step outside to fetch water, and a donkey brays in complaint. The street, if you can call it that, is a narrow dirt alley lined with uneven bricks. You carefully avoid stepping on anything squishy. Kids run barefoot, chickens scatter underfoot, and two men are loudly arguing over something that sounds like a fish theft, but might also involve an insulted grandmother. It's hard to tell. This is your morning. This is every morning, and it's only going to get hotter. You reach the edge of the village and see the Nile stretching out like a silver ribbon. Feluccas, those little sailboats, bob lazily in the current, and farmers are already out with their shadoofs lifting buckets of water by hand to irrigate their fields. It's a beautiful scene if you ignore the mosquitoes, the sticky air, and the very real possibility of stepping on a cobra in the grass. Back home, you hear your name shouted. Time to get moving. There are chores to do, people to feed, work to survive. In this world, time doesn't wait, and neither does the sun. Oh, and don't forget to rub a little natron under your arms before you head out. Deodorant hasn't been invented yet, and believe me, you're going to need something. You barely make it 5 steps out your front door before you regret everything. The sun, still yawning over the horizon, already blazes with that smug, I'm going to ruin your day intensity. The air is heavy with heat dust and the unmistakable aroma of animal dung sweat and fermented barley. You take a deep breath and instantly regret that too. The street is barely wide enough for 2 people to pass without brushing elbows, and you're constantly dodging chicken droppings, puddles of questionable origin, and carts pulled by sleepy oxen. Kids shriek and chase each other through the mess, like this is the height of fun, while an old woman swats flies off a basket of what might be dates or dried beetles. Hard to tell at a glance. Your feet wrapped in sandals made of braided papyrus aren't much help against the gravel and grit. You try not to wince with every step. Most people walk barefoot, but you're not quite that brave yet. Still, the sandals offer about as much protection as wearing lasagna noodles. You feel every pebble and the heat from the ground. It's like the earth itself is whispering, should have stayed in bed. You pass by a group of laborers on their way to a work site. They're already soaked in sweatshirts tied around their waists, joking loudly, in a way that doesn't quite sound joyful, more like laugh or cry energy. One of them gives you a nod, another coughs hard into the crook of his elbow. Tuberculosis, sand inhalation, just the usual ancient Egyptian morning rattle. Historians still argue whether daily exposure to dust contributed more to chronic illness than malnutrition or parasites. But you're not about to stop and ask. Further down the lane, the air thickens with smoke from cooking fires. A vendor fans the flames under a clay stove, flipping flatbreads and muttering about how the pharaoh never has to deal with this nonsense. You glance at his stall bred onions, maybe a few garlic cloves, and realize that street food in ancient Egypt is less mouth-watering aroma and more mildly edible panic snack. You duck to avoid a hanging laundry line swatting at flies as you do. They are everywhere. On your face and your ears, buzzing boldly around your nostrils like tiny, disrespectful helicopters. The locals seem unfazed, waving them away with automatic grace while holding full conversations. You, on the other hand, are moments away from a breakdown. One lands directly on your eyeball. You flinch so hard you nearly fall into a water trough. By now, the dust is coating your face and arms like flour. Your sweat makes it stick, an ancient exfoliation treatment you never asked for. A donkey trots past and kicks up another cloud. You cough spit and mutter something under your breath that would get you cursed if any temple scribe overheard. You find a slightly raised path, less mud, more cracked stone. It's lined with carved boundaries marking out property lines. Some of them still hold faint hieroglyphs warning passers-by not to defile the walkway under threat of divine retribution. You make a mental note next time, defile discreetly. A group of boys with shaved heads and single side locks run past, laughing as they toss a leather ball between them. One trips and face plants in a puddle, but he's up in a flash, grinning like it's part of the game. You wonder if he has tetanus now. Probably. Just ahead, there's a public well where people gather to collect water in ceramic jars. It's a social spot, a little oasis of gossip and complaint. Two women argue over who took whose clay pot, while a third casually breastfeeds her baby and pretends not to hear. You fill your jar, careful not to spill, but who are you kidding? It's lukewarm, slightly cloudy, and probably full of microscopic hitchhikers. Still, it's what you've got, and it's better than Nile water straight from the source. Speaking of which, you catch a glimpse of the river in the distance. The Nile looks calm and majestic, glinting gold in the morning sun. But don't let it fool you. That pretty surface hides sharp-toothed fish, territorial hippos, and waterborne parasites that historians still argue may have been the true plague of Egypt, not frogs or boils, but the silent, itchy kind that made baths a gamble. Back on the street, a stray cat brushes against your leg. You jump. It hisses. You apologize automatically. In ancient Egypt, cats are sacred and offending. One could earn you a serious scolding, or worse, divine side-eye, from Bastet, the feline goddess of protection. The cat disappears into a pile of pottery shards, probably off to nap in a sunbeam, like it owns the place. It kind of does. You finally reach your destination, dusty dripping, and about 2 shades redder than when you left the house. The sun's climbing higher, the air is thick like soup, and you're just getting started. Welcome to the street life of ancient Egypt, where survival requires strong sandals, stronger stomachs, and a deep respect for the sacred house cat. You've made it to the edge of the marketplace, and already your linen tunic clings to you like a wet rag. It's barely mid-morning, and the temperature has turned the air into something between a sauna and an armpit. You pause in a shady alcove, scratching your scalp, and that's when you feel it. Oh no. You've picked up lice. It was only a matter of time. In ancient Egypt, head lice are practically a national mascot. Everyone gets them from royal scribes to barley farmers. The usual solution, shave it all off. Women, men, children, it doesn't matter. Bald is beautiful here, or at least practical. Wigs made from human hair wool or even date palm fibers are common, often stiffened with beeswax or animal fat. You reach up and tug at your itchy hair again. Maybe it's time. You stop by a barber's stall, a mat under a palm awning, a sharp blade, and a man who probably doesn't change his water bowl too often. He offers to shave your head for a couple of dabins, roughly a few days' wages if you're poor. You politely decline. Your dignity isn't worth that much. Yet. Still, the whole hair thing gets more complicated the deeper you look. Egyptians love their wigs, and not just for fashion. Wigs mean status. If your fake hair is perfumed with frankincense or myrrh, you're somebody. If it's glued to your scalp with a mixture of beeswax and fat bonus points. Though let's be honest, it melts in the sun. There's nothing quite like the slow trickle of sheep grease down your neck to start the day. You push into the bustle of the market, dodging an overloaded porter with a jar balanced on his shoulder, and a child selling amulets shaped like scarabs. You notice a group of elite women moving through the crowd, skin carefully protected by gauzy veils, faces powdered with ground ochre. They smell faintly of lotus and cinnamon, homemade perfumes mixed and stored in alabaster jars. One of them makes eye contact and then looks away with expert disinterest. You suddenly feel very underdressed. Your own outfit is a simple white tunic, knee-length, belted at the waist. Linen's the only fabric around here. It breathes well, dries quickly, and scratches just enough to remind you how hot you are. Dyes are expensive, so unless you're a priest or royalty, you're basically a walking salt stain. And yes, it's true, Egyptian laundry involves pounding clothes in river water with clay and ash, then drying them on hot rocks. Historians still argue whether this method truly cleaned clothes or just baked the dirt in more artistically. You pass a wig vendor. Wigs of every kind hang like strange trophies from a wooden frame. Curled ones, braided ones, towering cones of elaborate hairdos that defy logic and physics. The vendor eyes you and offers a discount, his word, not yours. One of the wigs looks suspiciously like it has eyes. You keep walking. A sudden gust of hot wind kicks up a swirl of sand and trash. You shield your face and realize too late that some of that grit is going straight into your clothes. It's one of those annoying realities of Egypt's sand finds every seam, every fold, every part of your body you don't want exfoliated. You'll be scratching for hours. You duck into a small shrine for shade and composure. Inside, the air is cooler, calmer. A carved figure of the goddess Hathor, Lady of Joy and Love, smiles gently from her pedestal. A priest nearby is adjusting an offering tray with bread onions and a pot of beer. His head is clean-shaven, his robe freshly laundered, his face serene. You try not to look like you've just crawled out of a clay oven. The priest turns, gives you a nod, then politely asks if you'd like a purification blessing. You hesitate because that usually involves cold water and natron again. Still, you nod, and he flicks a few drops at your face while mumbling a prayer. It's more refreshing than you expected. You thank him with a respectful bow and slip out again. Back in the market, a scribe sits under an awning, writing on papyrus with a reed brush dipped in black ink made from soot. His wig is perfect, and his posture even more so. He looks up just long enough to sigh at your disheveled state before returning to his work, probably transcribing grain inventories or tax receipts. You think you hear him mutter amateur under his breath. Suddenly you hear laughter. A boy about 10 years old is strutting around in an oversized wig, pretending to be a nobleman demanding others kiss his sandals. A nearby merchant claps and tosses him a date. You smile. At least someone's thriving in this heat. As you continue weaving through the maze of humanity, beasts, and flies, you start to truly feel the weight of this society's unwritten rules. Appearances matter. Cleanliness, real or staged, matters. If you're dirty, disheveled, or smelling like yesterday's goat stew, people will notice. And they will judge. A group of young apprentices march past each with shaven heads and identical tunics, carrying baskets of stone carving tools. One turns and whispers something that makes the others laugh. You're 90% sure it's about you. You consider your options. Head back home for a wash. Risk the lice-infested shaving mat, or just keep walking and embrace your descent into sweaty chaos. Either way, you're learning fast. In ancient Egypt, you don't just get dressed, you get evaluated. And no matter what you're wearing, the sun is still winning. Word count 168. You're sweaty, sandy, and vaguely itchy. But it's time for the most important meal of the day, which here is both disappointing and essential. You make your way to a shaded corner of the courtyard, where someone has laid out a few clay bowls and a slightly lopsided basket of flatbread. A jug of sour beer wobbles nearby. This is breakfast in ancient Egypt, and it's about to test both your digestion and your expectations. The bread called ta is dense and dark, made from emmer wheat mixed with bits of grit ash, and whatever bugs didn't escape the grinding stone. It's been sitting out since yesterday, so it's nice and chewy. You tear off a chunk. It crumbles in your hand like stale corkboard. As you chew and chew, you realize this is less a food and more a jaw workout. Ancient Egyptians didn't just eat meals, they earned them. To help it go down, you take a sip of beer. Not the frothy golden kind you're imagining, but a thick, lumpy slurry brewed from fermented barley and flavored with dates. It's warm, sour, and about the consistency of oatmeal left too long in the sun. You try to ignore the sediment swirling in the bottom of your cup. Spoiler, it's not sediment. It might be part of a bug. And yet this breakfast is surprisingly nutritious. Despite the texture crimes, the bread and beer combo provided the bulk of the Egyptian diet, rich in calories, carbs, and a few helpful probiotics, assuming you don't mind the occasional side of intestinal distress. Historians still argue whether this diet led to widespread vitamin deficiencies, or whether the Egyptians actually got most of what they needed through variety across seasons. As you sip, someone passes you a bowl of lentil stew with bits of onion and what might be garlic, or possibly just very ambitious leeks. It's hot, salty, and mildly burnt on one side. You dip your bread in it, and for a moment it's almost good. Then you bite into something crunchy. You pray it was a chickpea. Another bowl contains dried fish. These little creatures are salted beyond recognition, bones and all. You're supposed to chew and swallow them whole like chips made of ocean regret. There's also a gray paste someone proudly calls fig jam, though it tastes like sweetened mud with seeds in it. A fly lands directly on your bread. You shoo it away. Two more arrive fighting over the same crust. No one else seems to notice or care. The Nile is nearby, and that means insects are simply part of the dining experience. At this point, your body's adjusting to the idea that everything you eat might also be a little bit alive. One of your housemates, an older woman with impressive biceps from years of grinding grain, offers you a bite of something wrapped in a leaf. You accept. Inside is a mashed concoction of dates and nuts, sticky and oddly refreshing. You're so grateful you nearly cry. She laughs and pats your shoulder like you're a toddler who's just discovered mangoes. Behind her, two children are fighting over the last honeycomb. The loser sobs dramatically and throws himself into a pile of straw. It's hard to tell if this is a tantrum or a very early performance art piece. Either way, no one reacts. Meanwhile, the family dog, more like a scruffy jackal mix, trots through the courtyard, tail high looking for scraps. He pauses next to you and stares with an unsettling intensity. You give him a piece of burnt bread. He sniffs it, looks offended, and leaves. You are judged. A rooster crows from somewhere above. You look up and spot it perched on the edge of the roof, watching like an angry landlord. You wonder briefly if roosters ever fall off roofs here. A reasonable fear in a world without railings. As the meal winds down, someone brings out a small pot of fermented goat milk. You pass. The memory of last week's incident, dubbed the yogurt hour in family lore, still haunts your bowels. Instead, you grab another hunk of bread, tuck it into your satchel, and gulp one last mouthful of beer sludge. Your stomach is full, but in that I just swallowed gravel kind of way. Ancient Egyptian breakfast is less about pleasure and more about survival. There's no cinnamon roll waiting at the end. Just fiber fermentation and the daily gamble of intestinal roulette. One curious detail scholars have uncovered: bits of honey beef and exotic spices in tomb offerings, leading to the assumption that richer Egyptians ate very differently from you. Their morning meals might have included honey cakes, fresh fruits, or even roasted duck. You, however, are stuck with yesterday's bread and something that might be pickled radish. Life, it turns out, is very unequal even before taxes kick in. As you rise from your seat, brushing crumbs and flies from your tunic, a distant gong signals the start of work hours. People begin packing up, children are herded, and an old man mutters a prayer to Thoth for strength and clarity. You try to do the same, though it's hard to concentrate when your breath still smells like fermented onions and your stomach is making sounds that belong in a crocodile documentary. Off you go now, a full belly, a sand-crusted mouth, and the undeniable knowledge that you just ate something you probably shouldn't have. It hits you mid-step. A dull pressure in your gut, a gurgling threat. Uh-oh. Nature calls, and in ancient Egypt, nature has limited options. You glance around the busy courtyard. No latrine signs, no stalls with polite doors. Just the knowledge that somewhere nearby there's a clay pot with your name on it. You shuffle back inside the house, trying not to look too obvious. There's a designated corner near the rear wall where a ceramic jar sits beneath a squat stool with a hole carved into it. It's barely a foot off the ground, and it's about as private as whispering in a crowded market. You eye the setup. A neighbor once called it the sitting throne, but there's nothing royal about it. If you're lucky, someone remembered to pour in a layer of sand or ashes to keep the smell down. If you're unlucky, and today you are the last person didn't clean it at all. Welcome to the world of ancient Egyptian sanitation. The people of the Nile were ahead of their time, in many ways Bedouin engineering calendars. But when it came to bathroom luxury, the past hits hard. Most homes had a chamber pot or pit system, and while wealthier families might have their own semi-enclosed brick latrine, the average household shares one communal solution, and not always with grace. You lower yourself onto the stool and immediately regret it. The stone is cold and rough. The pot underneath emits a mood, and the whole experience is as intimate as a group therapy session, minus the group, thankfully. A thin clay wall offers some dignity, but you can hear voices just on the other side. Someone sneezes. Someone else shouts about missing figs. You focus on finishing quickly. Now comes the fun part, cleaning up. Toilet paper hasn't been invented yet. Instead, you reach for a piece of broken pottery known as ostraca, or a reed brush dipped in Nile water. Historians still argue whether Egyptians used smooth stone's leaves or just resigned themselves to creative suffering. Today, you choose the pottery and wince accordingly. You will not be sitting comfortably for a while. Afterward, you rinse your hands in a basin of water laced with natron. There's no soap, only salt and prayer. You scrub hard and splash your face just for morale. And don't even think about flushing. The waste is carried out once a day, sometimes dumped into a midden pit outside the home or into the canal system if you're feeling lazy and morally flexible. Speaking of canals, public latrines are sometimes set up near the city edge built over irrigation ditches. It sounds convenient until you remember that those same ditches water the fields, and know the crops don't taste earthy for the right reasons. You step back outside, hoping no one can tell what you've just endured. But the awkward waddle and slightly haunted look give you away. A boy nearby snickers. You glare. He points to your sandals. You stepped in something. Again. Trying to maintain your dignity, you head for a communal well to wash your feet. A line of women is already there, chatting, splashing, occasionally breaking into laughter. One of them hands you a reed scoop. You mutter thanks and start scrubbing your toes with alarming vigor. Nearby, someone's dumping their chamber pot into a trench that feeds into a dry canal. The smell punches you right in the soul. You consider running. You stay. Ancient Egypt, after all, is not for the faint of nostril. A scruffy goat wanders up and sniffs your leg. You give it a look that says, "Don't test me." It bleats like it's judging your hygiene. For contrast, wealthier Egyptians have servants who carry away waste and even bathe them with scented oils. There's a myth that upper-class homes had actual plumbing, but most scholars agree the closest thing to a flushing toilet was a hole in the ground and a hopeful heart. Some tombs show carved reliefs of people squatting using fans to ward off the smell. Even in the afterlife, it seems you couldn't escape bathroom realities. On the rare chance you're visiting a temple complex, things improve slightly. Priests are obsessed with cleanliness. They wash multiple times a day, shave all their body hair, and have dedicated facilities, sometimes complete with fresh rushes for wiping. But unless you're a priest or a pharaoh, good luck getting invited in. You head back home with one less mystery about ancient life to solve. Your stomach's quiet for now, but you know it won't stay that way. The heat, the beer, the fig paste, it's all conspiring. Back in the courtyard, someone offers you a cup of cooled mint water. It's a small mercy. You sip slowly, watching the sun creep higher. Somewhere nearby, a woman is singing softly as she washes linens in a basin of crushed lotus petals and sand. It smells better than you feel. You sigh, lean against the wall, and try not to think about the fact that you'll be repeating this toilet adventure again, probably before dinner. Life in ancient Egypt, it's beautiful in art, but down here at ground level, it's mostly sand, sweat, and smells. Midday in ancient Egypt is not for mortals. The sun has climbed high enough to bake your shadow into the street, and the heat now wraps around your body like a wet wool cloak that someone lit on fire. Every movement feels like a mistake. You step out of the shade, and the air hits you like soup made of sweat, grit, and disappointment. Your skin prickles. Within minutes, you're not just hot, you're burning. Sunscreen doesn't exist yet, unless you count the local folk remedy of rubbing crocodile dung mixed with oil on your arms. And yes, it is exactly what it sounds like. Someone nearby offers you a dab from a cracked ceramic jar. You try to politely decline, but they insist. The smell hits you before your fingers even make contact. You smear it on your forearm and immediately regret all of your life choices. You are now hot, sticky, and slightly green. Welcome to peak sun hours in ancient Egypt. The elite, of course, know how to deal with this. Wealthier homes are built with cooling in mind, thick walls, narrow windows, shaded courtyards, even jars of water placed to create evaporation drafts. But you live in a humble, sun-battered house with one window, 3 flies, and 0 breeze. So your only option is survival through stillness. You duck into a neighbor's shaded veranda. They nod, understanding the code of the sun. Anyone caught outside at noon is either a god or an idiot. A small group has already gathered there, some old men playing a game with pebbles and carved wooden boards. 2 women weaving baskets and a goat lying directly in the coolest spot, smirking. You sit in a corner, fanning yourself with a palm frond, and swatting the occasional horsefly, each one more confident than the last. Your skin itches again. You scratch, but it doesn't help. A neighbor leans over and casually mentions maybe sand fleas. Wonderful. Your new lifestyle includes both external parasites and internal ones. Historians still argue whether these insects were the primary cause of skin infections in ancient populations, or merely a minor inconvenience compared to, say, leprosy. Someone brings out a bowl of fresh, cooling paste made of crushed cucumbers and sour milk. You're offered a smear for your neck. It's surprisingly effective and makes you smell like salad. Nearby, a toddler toddles past, completely naked, except for an amulet of Taweret, the hippo goddess of childbirth. The child trips, lands face first in the dust, then gets up laughing. You envy their optimism. Meanwhile, the flies won't stop. They are relentless, the true rulers of this land. One lands on your eyebrow and stares at you unblinking. You swat it. Another takes its place. Someone jokes that flies are the souls of angry ancestors. You're pretty sure your ancestors were not this clingy. You look around and notice everyone seems to have something dangling from their necks, beads, charms, small ivory carvings. These aren't just fashion accessories. They're protective amulets meant to ward off illness, misfortune, or in your case, aggressive insects. You're handed one shaped like the Eye of Horus. You put it on, half hoping it comes with a force field. A woman in the corner is braiding her daughter's hair, sectioning it carefully, and coating the scalp with what looks like oil and crushed myrrh. It smells sharp, but not unpleasant. You remember your own wig, now removed and resting in a bowl of water, and wonder if you'll ever be lice-free again. Suddenly, someone gasps. A scorpion scuttles across the veranda floor, moving with terrifying speed. It disappears into a crack in the stone, leaving behind only silence and tension. No one moves. A moment later, the tension breaks and everyone resumes their business like this happens all the time. You mentally update your list: lice, flies, fleas, and venomous monsters. This really is the full experience. Outside, the sun glares like an angry god. The streets are empty now, save for the occasional dog panting in the shade. Everyone knows better than to walk around. The very ground seems to radiate heat. Touch a stone and it might sear your hand. Walk barefoot and you'll learn new dance moves. You lean back, close your eyes, and drift for a moment. The hum of voices, the buzz of insects, the occasional splash of water, all of it blends into a kind of low, sleepy music. If you could forget the sweat dripping down your spine, you might almost call this peaceful. Then someone opens a jar of preserved onions. The smell hits you like a wall. You open your eyes and see an elderly man eating slices of it like candy. He offers you one with a grin. You nod out of politeness and chew. It's strong, sharp, and somehow hotter than the weather. Your eyes water instantly. The man laughs and pats your shoulder. You're initiated now. Back at your house, the animals have found their own cool corners. The donkey stands in the shade of a fig tree, swatting flies with its tail, while a cat sleeps directly on your laundry pile. You decide not to move it. That cat might be the only thing in this house with divine favor. By late afternoon, the sun finally starts to loosen its grip. The air cools a few degrees, and people emerge slowly from their homes like cautious beetles. You step into the light again, blinking. Your clothes are wrinkled, your skin smells like fermented cucumber, and your wig is still dripping. But you survived the heat of the day. Barely. The sun may be easing off, but your workload isn't. The village is awake again, and everyone's back on their feet, children fetching water, women returning to their grinding stones, and men. Well, many are trudging toward back-breaking labor that makes your spine ache just thinking about it. You're one of them now. A boy shoves a clay tablet into your hands. Orders for the day. You're headed to a nearby construction site where your role is listed as water carrier and mortar mixer. Not exactly glamorous, but better than being on dung detail or hauling quarried limestone in the midday sun. Maybe. You follow the others' feet, dragging down a dusty path to the edge of a building zone where a small shrine is being expanded. You arrive just in time to see a crew of workers, shirtless, sun-darkened, half covered in dried mud, grunting as they haul bricks into place. A foreman barks instructions in short, irritated bursts. His wig is slightly crooked, and his sandals look newer than anyone else's. Clearly management. You start with the water run lugging a sloshing amphora from a nearby canal. It's awkward heavy and leaks down your back with every step. The sun's lower now, but the humidity clings like a curse. Your shoulder aches from the strap. You stumble once, nearly spilling everything, and earn a loud groan from a scribe tracking productivity with a reed pen and tablet. You are now officially inefficient. The bricks you're helping mix are made from Nile mud and chopped straw formed in wooden molds and left to bake in the sun. You're handed a paddle and told to stir. The mixture clings to your arms like clay syrup, and the smell, earthy, sour, and vaguely fishy, gets into your nose and stays there. Flies love it. You try not to scratch. As you work, a man next to you launches into a half-joking tale about a colleague who lost a sandal and stepped directly on a black asp. The punchline is that he lived but walked in circles for a week. Everyone laughs. You laugh too nervously. You notice another worker with hands wrapped in linen strips. Blisters. No gloves in this world. Your own palms are already raw. One blister pops mid-stir. You pretend not to notice. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptian workers were slaves or skilled laborers under strict control. What we do know is that most large projects relied on rotating teams of peasants pulled from across the kingdom, especially during the Nile's flood season when farming paused. You're one of those seasonal conscripts now trapped in a labor lottery with no say in your shift or the contents of your dinner. Speaking of dinner, you'll earn yours with sweat. You glance around. To your left, two men lift a beam into place using nothing but leverage and shouts. To your right, a teenage girl in a linen wrap expertly smooths mortar between bricks. Children run messages back and forth, and an older man chants a rhythmic work song meant to keep pace and boost morale. It helps, a little. Then a cloud of dust explodes as someone knocks over a load of straw. You cough. Hard. The taste of the earth is in your throat, your teeth, your soul. You take a swig of water only to realize the jar is nearly empty, and you're not due for another refill until sundown. It's not all misery. There's camaraderie. A man pats your back when your mix passes inspection. Someone shares a dried fig, and another tells a joke about the god Thoth accidentally turning a goat into a scribe. It doesn't translate well, but you laugh anyway. The air begins to cool. Your arms move on their own now. There's a strange rhythm to the work mud mix lift smear. Again, by sunset, your muscles feel like stone. You're caked in dust, salt, and sweat. Your clothes are stiff with grime. The foreman dismisses you with a grunt and a wave. You stagger home, every step an argument between your legs and gravity. You pass a shrine to Ptah, the god of craftsmen. You stop, nod respectfully. He probably saw your wobble earlier. You wonder about the bigger construction projects, the temples, pyramids, obelisks. How people like you built them day by day, brick by brick. There's debate, of course, among scholars. Were workers well-fed specialists who took pride in their craft? Or were they beaten into obedience and discarded when injured? Truth is likely somewhere in the middle. But after today, you understand whatever they were tougher than you. Back at home, you collapse in the courtyard. Someone hands you a cup of beer. It tastes like warm barley mush and glory. You down it in one gulp. There's a smear of mud on your cheek. A fly lands on it. You don't swat it. You've earned this moment of stillness. Your body hurts in new and creative ways. Your blisters have blisters. But the sun is gone and the sky over the Nile glows purple and gold. You live through a full shift of labor in ancient Egypt. Barely. The stars are coming out as you limp back toward the village, dragging your sore feet through the sand. But don't get too excited, your day in ancient Egypt isn't over. Far from it. See, you still need to eat. And unlike in your modern life, where food is a button away, here it requires effort, patience, and occasionally luck. Tonight's dinner, whatever hasn't spoiled, been eaten by animals or stolen by your neighbors. You arrive at your dwelling, a one-room mud brick house, its walls radiating the day's heat, and catch a whiff of something vaguely edible. A pot simmers over embers, watched by a woman with calloused hands, and the exhausted eyes of someone who has ground enough grain today to feed a pharaoh's goat. You're handed a small bowl of stew lentils, garlic, onion, and barley thickened with stale bread. It's surprisingly satisfying until your teeth crunch on something that is absolutely not food. A pebble, or maybe a bit of sand. You try not to think about it and chew on. One bowl, no seconds. The staple of the Egyptian diet is bread, but it's not the fluffy stuff you might imagine. It's coarse, dense, often laced with bits of grit from stone-ground flour. Historians believe this daily grind pun, fully intended, is partly why so many mummies have shockingly worn down teeth. You already feel a little toothache, but try not to dwell on it. Next to you, a young boy eats with both hands. No plates, no forks, no napkins, just bread as a scoop and fingers as utensils. You copy him. There's no meat tonight, but you hear rumors of a fish caught earlier. Too bad it was reserved for the headman. You weren't even in the running. Drinks. There's beer, of course, but not the kind that comes in a frosty glass with bubbles. This one's thick and porridge-like, cloudy with sediment and bits of floating chaff. Still, it's nutritious and mildly alcoholic, which after your day feels like the closest thing to luxury you'll get. You sip slowly. It tastes like wet bread, but it goes down easy enough. Dessert doesn't really exist unless you count dates or honey, and those are rare treats. Tonight you chew on a shriveled fig. It's sweet, chewy, and kind of resembles something that fell behind your fridge, but you're too tired to complain. Then comes the most shocking part of all dishes. There's no running water, no soap, just a basin of sand for scrubbing, and maybe a rag that looks like it used to be someone's kilt. You half-heartedly wipe your bowl, then give up when a goat tries to lick it clean. The courtyard is quiet now. People settle in under the stars. There's no Netflix, no scrolling through your phone while pretending to sleep. Just stories. An old man begins reciting a tale about the sky goddess Nut, swallowing the sun every night, and giving birth to it every morning. It's poetic, eerie, and more engaging than you'd expect from a bedtime myth. You lean back against the warm wall, watching a scarab beetle crawl past your toe. You hear about Set, the god of chaos, and how he once chopped his brother Osiris into pieces. Someone chuckles that it's just like politics today. Some things never change. There's laughter. These moments of community feel timeless, as if people have always needed a little gossip and mythology to wind down. Historians still argue whether the average Egyptian villager was deeply religious or simply went along with rituals out of tradition. What's clear is that spiritual life saturates everything. Death taxes farming food, even bedtime. The gods are everywhere, watching, judging, occasionally smiting. You look up at the sky. No streetlights. No air traffic. Just an overwhelming spray of stars and the Milky Way like a river of milk curving above the desert. It's breathtaking and just a little terrifying. You realize how small you are, how brief, and also how incredibly tired. Your neighbors are settling in. Some are curling up on reed mats outside to escape the stuffy house. Others are indoors behind linen curtains, swatting flies and arguing softly. You follow their lead, dragging your mat out under the sky. Your body protests as you lie down. Every joint has filed a complaint. Your blistered hands curl instinctively. A breeze stirs the palms overhead, and you hear distant frogs croaking from the canal. A baby wails, then hushes. You finally begin to relax, and just as you do buzz, a mosquito lands on your face. You slap it miss and groan. Welcome to the ancient world, where you get bites without Wi-Fi. You wrap your tunic tighter, bury your face in your elbow and will yourself to drift off. For a brief moment, you imagine what it would be like to do this every single day. Wake at dawn, bake in the sun, eat grit-flavored stew, and lie here sore and bitten under the stars. You wouldn't last a week, let alone a lifetime. Still, there's something deeply human here. A rhythm to life, a connection to land and sky and myth. It's hard, exhausting, mosquito-filled, and yet strangely peaceful. Just don't romanticize it too much. Your alarm tomorrow is a rooster, and your job, oh, it's dung collection. Sleep tight. Your eyes flutter open to the crow of a rooster, scratchy, insistent, and far too close. You've barely slept. The mat is rough, your limbs ache, and you're pretty sure something slithered past your foot at some point in the night. There's no snooze button here, and no pillow to throw over your face. You sit up bleary-eyed and immediately regret every choice that led you to this ancient reality. Morning in ancient Egypt doesn't come gently. The air is already warming, and the household is alive with motion. Someone is stoking the hearth. Someone else is sweeping with a bundle of reeds, and a toddler is happily making mud pies with actual goat droppings. Delightful. Today's task. It's not glamorous. You're assigned to help collect fuel, but not wood that's scarce and expensive. No, today you'll be walking the paths near the canal, collecting dried animal dung for cooking fires. You hesitate. Surely they're joking. They are not. You set off with a woven basket, eyes scanning the ground. Within minutes, the smell fades into the background, just part of the desert breeze mixed with dust, fish, and sweat. Every time you stoop to pick something up, your back reminds you that you are absolutely not cut out for this. It's not just you. Dung collecting was a real daily task for many Egyptians. With limited resources for burning anything flammable was valuable dried reeds, dried dung, even bits of worn-out textiles. In fact, some scholars believe the ubiquitous use of dung as fuel contributed to the smoky, eye-watering indoor air that was common in even the nicest homes. A group of kids runs by laughing and barefoot, calling out to you in a language you only half understand. One points at your basket and smirks. You're not even doing it right. Great. Once your basket is full, you haul it back to the village, passing by a procession headed toward a nearby tomb. They're carrying offerings, beer, bread, linen, perfume. You pause, pretending to adjust your load, and eavesdrop. It's a funerary ritual rich with meaning and tradition. The dead are not merely gone, they're transitioning to a new phase of life. And like celebrities at an after-party, they're going to need supplies. Tomb goods are the carry-on luggage of eternity. Historians still debate how many villagers truly believed in an elaborate afterlife versus just following cultural norms out of habit. But belief or not, the rituals were everywhere, seen, heard, and smelled. The mourners wail dramatically, tearing at their garments and smearing ashes on their faces. You catch the gaze of a priest wearing a leopard skin robe. He's carrying incense and muttering chants to Anubis. It's eerie and beautiful, even with your dung basket on your hip. Later, as the sun climbs higher, you're pulled into another chore, fishing along the canals. You're handed a net, more patch than net, and pointed toward a shallow spot where fish dart just beneath the surface. You wade in, careful not to step on anything sharp. The water is murky and warm, and something brushes against your leg. You try to stay calm. Fishing is both survival and sport in this world. Richer Egyptians might hunt with spears from reed boats, but you're stuck sloshing around waist deep, squinting at ripples. After a few embarrassing misses, you manage to trap a small, squirming fish. Victory. It promptly flips out of your hands and disappears back into the water. The others laugh. You decide this moment won't make your highlight reel. You take a break beneath a palm tree, chewing on a lump of flatbread. A local woman sits beside you and hums a song about the Nile's moods, how it rises with joy, how it punishes the careless. You nod along, watching the river glint like a vein of gold through the landscape. It hits you that nearly every moment of an Egyptian's day is intertwined with the Nile. It's the giver of life, the shaper of routines, the calendar, and the clock. If the Nile floods too much or not enough, entire villages are doomed. And this year, people are nervous. The flood hasn't come yet. There's talk of omens. Crops are uncertain. Even the priests seem edgy. You hear the bells of a nearby temple. Somewhere a scribe is writing all of this down. Your grain count at your failed fishing. Your pitiful dung quota on a scrap of papyrus. The bureaucracy of ancient Egypt is infamous. Even the smallest villages are wrapped in layers of record-keeping taxes and temple obligations. You wonder what your daily life looks like through those records. Probably less noble peasant and more. Why is this guy so bad at everything? Back at the village, there's more hauling, more cleaning, more grinding of grain. The sun is high now, and every surface is blazing hot to the touch. You look longingly at the canal, but bath time isn't until later, and you have to share. Instead, you get a small moment of respite. Someone offers you a lotus-scented ointment to dab on your skin. It's sticky and strange, but smells like sweet herbs and river blossoms. A rare luxury. Quirky fact, crocodile dung mixed with honey and oil was sometimes used in cosmetics, or even as a contraceptive. You decline a second application just in case. The heat presses in. You realize your entire body feels like it's been roasted, rolled in sand, and wrapped in burlap. Which, to be fair, is not far from the truth. Still, there's something oddly grounding about it. Your senses are overloaded, sun in your eyes, grit between your toes, the droning hum of insects, distant laughter. It's not comfortable, but it's real. As evening approaches again, your basket is emptied. Your catch, a single fish half mashed, gets handed over to someone more competent for cooking. You wash your arms in a clay basin, watch the sun begin to dip behind the palms, and brace yourself for another round of chewy stew and mystery beer. You survived another day, barely. But hey, no one cursed you, no crocodiles got involved, and you didn't fall in the canal. You might just make it through the week. Might. By now you're thinking, surely it can't get worse. But welcome to the joyless middle of your week in ancient Egypt, where everything itches, everyone is cranky, and nothing is refrigerated. The early morning light is softer today, tinted lavender against the mud brick homes. But don't let it fool you, it'll be blistering within the hour. You're sent off to help in the fields, which means slogging through a morning of labor, alongside farmers who make you look like a decorative house cat. You trudge past irrigation ditches cut from the Nile, marveling at how the system somehow works. Buckets on ropes, water wheels powered by oxen, and channels that lead like veins into the fields. It's ingenious and exhausting. You're handed a hoe. Not the metal kind you know, but a bent stick lashed with leather chipped from overuse. The job: break up the dry clods so seeds can be scattered. And just when you find your rhythm, someone calls you over to help with fertilizer. You already know where this is going. Yes, more dung. Apparently it's the theme of your ancient experience. Still, there's a rhythm to it all: stoop, swing, scatter, repeat. You try not to think too hard about the calluses forming on your soft, modern palms. One farmer hums a song about the falcon god Horus smiting weeds. You smile politely and nod, unsure whether it's religious or just agriculturally aggressive. Then something changes. A buzz goes through the village. A tax collector is arriving. Suddenly, everyone is very busy or very anxious or both. Now, this isn't a modern IRS-type situation. No forms, no deductions. This is a royal agent showing up with armed guards and a papyrus scroll, and he wants his grain. You watch as farmers bring out sacks of barley, careful not to short the count. You also see a few clever ones hide extra bags behind storage pots. Historians still argue whether these collectors were standardized or wildly corrupt. Given how fast one guy pockets a silver ring when no one's looking, you lean toward wildly corrupt. You're not directly taxed, but your host is. So you're volunteered again to help make up the difference. This time it means hauling the tax grain to the granary a mile away. Under the sun. In sandals made from papyrus cord. The granary is a giant mud brick silo guarded by scribes who record each sack in a log so dense with symbols, it looks like someone doodled angrily in bird snake code. They ask your name. You freeze. Do you give your modern name? Do you lie? You mutter something that sounds vaguely Egyptianish. The scribe shrugs, writes foreign laborer, and waves you on. By midday, you're told you've earned a break. This means chewing on some lentils and dates while sitting in the shadow of a wall covered in faded hieroglyphs. A teenager hands you a carved board and pebbles an ancient game called Senet. You clumsily take part, even managing to win once. Or at least you think you won. The rules are fuzzy even now. Historians still debate whether Senet was just for fun or had mystical afterlife implications. You hope it was just for fun. You really don't want to end up accidentally cursed because you landed on the wrong square. Then comes the surprise event of the day, a funeral feast. Turns out someone important has died, and the entire village is celebrating his journey to the afterlife. You're pulled into a chaotic parade of platters, roasted goose beer, sweet cakes, and lots of shouting. Children dart underfoot, dogs bark, and old women pour perfume onto burning coals until the air smells like a dessert that got set on fire. It's more chaotic than respectful, but the emotion is real. People are laughing, weeping, singing. You sip beer from a ceramic jug, thick, warm, and gritty. You chew the foam and pretend it's intentional. The feast features a storytelling session with a gray-haired elder recounting tales of the gods Isis and Osiris, the sun god Ra sailing through the sky, the trials of Set. The kids are rapt. You're trying to focus, but your stomach is unsure how to process fermented barley and half-cooked duck. Then comes the part no one warned you about. The mourners begin reenacting scenes from the deceased's life. One man stumbles around pretending to carry bricks while shouting exaggerated complaints. Everyone laughs. You realize this is how they honor the dead, by remembering even their annoying habits. It's kind of sweet. Also kind of embarrassing. You're pulled into a dance circle. You try to follow the steps. It's not graceful. You hear one child yell, "He dances like a donkey," and another reply, "A dead donkey." Great. Now you're folklore. Later, a few young men sneak off to a shrine with offerings, dates, incense, tiny amulets, and invite you along. You follow curious. The shrine is carved into a rock wall dedicated to a lesser-known fertility god. One of them winks. You step back. Quirky tidbit: some Egyptian shrines were, let's say, anatomically specific. Archaeologists have uncovered statues and carvings that make modern museum displays a bit awkward. You quickly excuse yourself before you end up in a fresco somewhere. As the sun sets and the feast winds down, you help clear the remains, tossing bones into a clay pit, scraping dishes with reeds. A grandmother hands you a small amulet as thanks, a blue scarab carved from faience. You're touched. It's beautiful, and probably slightly magical. Exhausted and slightly tipsy, you collapse onto your mat. There's dust in your hair, soot on your face, and the scent of onions stuck in your nose. But for a brief moment, under the stars, with the river whispering nearby, and the last strains of song fading into the dark, you feel something ancient stir in your bones, a kind of connection. Then the mosquito bites kick in. By the time your eyes blink open again, it's not the sun that wakes you, it's the sound of shouting. Not angry exactly, just frantic. Turns out there's been a hippopotamus sighting. Yes, a real one. Right near the irrigation canal. You're told to come see, which is less a suggestion and more a command. Still groggy, you trail behind a group of villagers moving toward the reeds with long sticks and serious faces. And there it is. Enormous, glistening, snorting, and honest to Anubis hippo wallowing like it owns the place. Which in fairness, it kind of does. Egyptians didn't just fear hippos. They revered them, and sometimes actively tried to chase them away. The god Taweret, the pregnant hippo lady, protected childbirth and homes. But real-life hippos, they were considered dangerous pests, crop-destroying, boat-flipping tanks on legs. Historians still argue whether villagers hunted them routinely or just avoided them like plague-ridden tax scrolls. Either way, today it's your turn to help scare it off. You grip a stick and yell from a safe distance, mostly because your fight or flight response is choosing neither. Eventually, the hippo lumbers off unimpressed. Everyone cheers. You survive. Barely. And just like that, you're back on the daily grind. Today's job is with the temple workers. Your host's cousin has a brother who has a sister who knows someone in the priesthood, and you've been offered a gig. No, not as a priest, not even a scribe. You're a cleaner. The temple is vast and cool, its walls thick with centuries of incense and dust. Stone columns loom above you, carved with rows of hieroglyphs and strange, otherworldly beings. Falcon-headed gods, crocodile-headed deities, and one guy with the face of a baboon playing a lute. You sweep. You dust. You carry offerings of beer and bread into side chambers, trying not to trip on the lotus-shaped floor tiles. In one shadowy room, a priest performs a ritual. You peek in and quickly look away. He's feeding a statue. with honey cakes. You feel like you've walked in on something deeply personal. Quirky fact, temple rituals were intensely formal. Statues were dressed, fed, washed, even sung to. You're suddenly very aware of how little you've done for the figurines on your bookshelf back home. Later, a scribe notices your curiosity, and to your surprise lets you sit in on a lesson. You try your hand at writing hieratic script, the cursive cousin of hieroglyphs on a scrap of ostraca. It looks like a drunk cat attacked the ink with a twig. The scribe laughs kindly and tells you your handwriting resembles a startled ibis. You accept this as a compliment. You also learn that not all Egyptians read or wrote. Literacy was a priestly and bureaucratic skill. Still, messages were everywhere in tombs on stelae painted across coffin lids. Every symbol a whisper across time. Historians still debate how common graffiti was, though a few choice phrases like Nebet is cute and Hotep smells suggest teenagers haven't changed much. Lunch today is a temple offering surplus lentils, figs, beer, and something called medu, a kind of fried onion cake. You devour it. It fights back later. That night you'll discover why no one drinks temple beer twice, but the real treat comes when a festival is announced. The priests are prepping for the beautiful festival of the valley, where sacred statues are paraded through town, and everyone pretends to be extra pious for the day. Your job, carry a torch. You join the long line of villagers and priests processing through the streets, their arms heavy with incense and garlands. A boat-shaped shrine is hoisted aloft and carried with reverence. It holds the god Amun hidden behind veils of linen. Drums pound, flutes trill, perfume clouds the air. You chant something approximating the right syllables, though to your ears it sounds like Huna Rabap. People toss flowers at the procession. One hits you square in the nose. You sneeze mid-prayer. A nearby priest glares. Oops. Still, it's strangely moving. A moment where time melts, where modern you and ancient you briefly overlap. That night, under a festival moon, you're invited to sleep inside a side chamber of the temple just for the novelty of it. It's cool and quiet, and you lie on woven mats surrounded by faded murals of gods sailing across the sky. You drift off, wondering if your dreams will be monitored by Bess, the squat, lion-faced dwarf god of dreams and protection. You hope so. Anyone who can chase away nightmares while also rocking a tambourine deserves respect. And sure enough, your sleep is deep, uninterrupted, until something nibbles your toe. You shoot awake, a temple cat. Big eyes, smug face, purring like a small generator. It curls up beside you, tail flicking against your leg. You're not mad, not even surprised. In fact, by this point in your stay, nothing surprises you anymore. You're really starting to get into the rhythm of things, or at least you were until the weather turns on you. The breeze dies. The sun doubles down, and the entire sky takes on a hazy bronze hue. Locals mutter under their breath. Some start covering their faces. A few retreat indoors. You, being the brave but oblivious time tourist you are, ask what's going on. Someone finally says it Khamsin. The Khamsin is no ordinary wind. It's a hot, dry, suffocating force that barrels in from the desert, carrying walls of dust and sand with it. Within minutes, the village feels like it's under siege. The air becomes thick. You blink and your eyes feel like they've been sandblasted. You retreat indoors where every crack and seam is being sealed with cloth. Even the cats are hiding. The air smells like scorched earth and crushed cumin. You can't help coughing. Someone hands you a damp linen rag to breathe through. Historians still debate just how often these storms occurred. but some records describe multiple waves each spring, each capable of wrecking entire harvests or causing temporary blindness. Ancient spells even referred to the red wind as a demon sent by angry gods. Trapped in the house with several restless villagers, you find yourself roped into a board game tournament. Yes, you heard that right. You're playing Senet, the favorite pastime of ancient Egyptians. It's kind of like backgammon, but with divine consequences. Each move you make supposedly mirrors your soul's journey through the afterlife. One wrong roll and whoops, you're cursed to wander the duat forever. No pressure. A wiry old man wins every round with unsettling ease. He never speaks, just grins, rolls the knucklebone dice, and clears the board like some ancient Vegas shark. You quietly wonder if he's human, or possibly just Thoth slumming it. To distract yourself from losing for the 5th time in a row, you help one of the women in the household with a bit of weaving. The loom is simple but clever vertical, with weighted warp threads and room for intricate designs. She teaches you to create a pattern using bright red and green wool. You mess it up, but she praises your effort with a smile. Egyptians appreciated textiles not just for clothing, but as currency offerings and burial shrouds. "Don't worry," she says, watching you knot the fringe awkwardly. Even pharaohs had someone else do their sewing. A joke possibly, but it lands. As the storm drags into its 3rd hour, the light outside goes from amber to blood orange. Dust seeps in no matter how many cloths are stuffed in the doorframe. You start to feel the tiniest bit stir-crazy. At one point, a goat wanders through the living room. No one bats an eye. To pass the time, someone pulls out a musical instrument, a kind of lute called a nefer. Its strings hum gently, and soon someone else begins tapping a beat on an overturned pot. A girl hums a tune, eyes closed, completely absorbed. You try to hum along. Bad idea. You're quickly shushed. Quirky fact. Ancient Egyptians loved music, and many households had at least one instrument: lutes, lyres, flutes, even sistrums, metallic clappers used in temple rites. Musicians were often held in high regard, especially female singers of Amun. Eventually, the worst of the Khamsin passes. The air is still warm and dry, but at least you can breathe without coughing up half of Giza. You step outside, blinking at the newly washed, sand-blasted world. The streets look unfamiliar, like a dreamscape. Everything is coated in dust. Even the palm trees seem exhausted. Your host insists on a cleansing ritual, symbolic, yes, but practical too. You strip to the waist and pour water from a tall-necked jar, scrubbing your arms with a mixture of natron and crushed mint. It leaves your skin tingling, your pores unclogged, and your soul apparently fresh enough to rejoin civilization. The evening calls for a small celebration, not because of a calendar holiday, but simply because the wind has passed and the village still stands. There's flatbread smeared with goat cheese and date syrup, roasted chickpeas, and wine that's best described as chunky. A bonfire crackles in the middle of the courtyard, and stories are shared, real and exaggerated. One young man tells of a crocodile that lived for 300 years and could recite spells backward. Another insists his uncle once saw a djinn flying over the Nile, its face like a lion and its breath like cinnamon. Historians still argue whether these tales were religious metaphors or just really good ghost stories, you murmur. Someone hears you and grins. "They're both," she says, tossing a fig your way. You catch it, barely. Later that night, you sit alone near the embers, watching sparks rise into the star-streaked sky. The air is cooler now and mercifully still. You think back to your modern life, climate control, Wi-Fi, bug spray. And then you realize, not for the first time, just how wildly lucky and fragile human comfort really is. The hippo, the dust storm, the baboon-headed god. Somehow it all made sense today. Just as you're about to turn in, someone hands you a reed mat and a small amulet, a tiny green scarab carved from glazed faience. For good luck, they say. You smile, hold it close, and wonder if maybe, just maybe, it's starting to work. You wake up to a strange, rhythmic plunk, 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 echoing off the mud brick walls. At first you think it's your modern alarm clock trying to reassert itself from another dimension. But no, it's a water wheel. A sakia, to be exact. Outside, a cow is slowly trudging in a circle, powering a wooden gear that raises clay pots from a narrow well. The whole contraption creaks with ancient precision. A boy nearby hums as he checks the water channels, his bare feet squelching in the wet soil. You step into the early morning warmth and try to shake off the sleep and the sand still in your ears from yesterday's kamsin. Today you're going to work the fields, or more precisely, you're going to try. See, Egypt wasn't all pyramids and perfumes, it was mostly agriculture. Grain was the lifeblood of the kingdom, and most Egyptians spent their lives planting, tending, and harvesting wheat and barley in the fertile black soil of the Nile floodplain. You're handed a wooden hoe, a pointed stick really, and directed toward a long row of wheat sprouts. The soil is soft but dense, and every motion makes your shoulders burn within minutes. The others work with hypnotic flow, swing, pull, pat. You, on the other hand, look like a wounded duck trying to dig its way out of quicksand. The woman next to you gives a sympathetic chuckle and adjusts your grip. You try again. Better, still terrible. Here's the kicker, this isn't even the tough part. By mid-morning, you're pulling weeds bent double at the waist. Your back aches. You sweat through your linen wrap, which, by the way, isn't holding up well against Egyptian mosquitoes. One bites your ankle. Another goes for the forehead. You swat like a maniac. No one else seems to care. Quirky detail of the day. Ancient Egyptians believed that certain weeds were manifestations of chaos gods, especially those that sprang up during harvest. Farmers would chant little spells as they yanked them out, calling on divine help to keep the evil roots from spreading. You try one of the chants. Nothing happens. The weed wins. A child offers you a snack, a few sycamore figs and some dried carob pods. You thank him with a wheeze. The figs taste strange, a little like honey and chalk, but they keep you going. Later, a priest passes by to bless the irrigation channel. He dips a bundle of reeds in water and sprinkles it along the path. You learn that temple land is prime agricultural real estate, and most major temples own vast fields worked by peasants and laborers, some paid, many not. Historians still debate how much of this land was taxed or given back in kind. What's clear is that the temples were economic powerhouses, not just places of prayer. Back to your labor, a man next to you sings a field song, low, repetitive, and oddly beautiful. The melody bends like the river itself. You hum along until you realize it's a love song, and suddenly feel like you've just made eye contact with a coworker during karaoke. When the sun climbs higher, it's time for canal duty. You help redirect the water with a broad wooden paddle, scooping and pushing the flow down toward a thirsty row of papyrus plants. It's a delicate balance, too much water, and the roots rot too little, and the stalks wither. You mess it up at least 3 times before someone gently takes the paddle from you. As you rest under a small acacia tree, you ask your field partner how he learned all this. From my father, he says. and his father, and his. It's not a boast, just fact. Farming knowledge here is ancestral, memorized more than measured. No textbooks, just observation repetition and the occasional whispered offering to Osiris. You're starting to appreciate how hard life was and still is for the majority of Egyptians. Forget golden thrones. Forget tombs packed with jewels. This is Egypt. Dusty, back-breaking, sunlit survival. Just before sunset, it's time for threshing. You gather bundles of wheat and take them to a circular area where oxen are driven around in loops, trampling the grain free from the husk. It's loud, chaotic, and kind of exciting. You help toss the stalks into the air with a big forked wooden tool, the winnowing fan letting the wind carry away the chaff. Dust stings your eyes, but you're oddly proud. You've contributed. Barely. A boy whistles sharply, and the animals slow. The sun dips below the horizon in a blaze of orange and purple. People begin to laugh, chat, and collect what's left. The day ends in a mix of exhaustion and camaraderie. Historians still argue whether most farmers lived a stable life or constantly teetered on the edge of famine. Some tomb paintings show peaceful, prosperous farms. Others hint at crop failures and desperate prayers. What's clear is that the Nile was both gift and gamble. If it flooded too high or too little, everything changed. As you wash off in the irrigation canal, mosquitoes be damned. You look up at the stars emerging over the plain. For the first time, you don't miss your phone or your mattress. Not much, anyway. You lie back in the reeds, your hands scratched, your calves sore, and your stomach full of field dust. You've survived your first real day of labor. Barely. The desert doesn't sleep. It simmers, cools, and then murmurs back to life before dawn. You stir under a stiff linen wrap, your muscles groaning in protest. And today you're going to the capital. Ancient Thebes, or as locals call it, Waset. You hitch a ride on a reed boat, long and narrow, its papyrus hull gliding effortlessly along the Nile. A man rows at the stern, humming the same field tune from yesterday. On either side, the river unfurls like a mirror. Birds skim low white egrets, slicing the mist. A crocodile eyes you from a mud bank. You inch subtly toward the middle of the boat. This is your glimpse into the bustling heart of ancient Egypt. Thebes isn't just a city, it's a spiritual hub, a government capital, and a teeming marketplace of the divine and the absurd. As the boat pulls in near a dock of stacked limestone, you hear the noise before you see it. Voices haggling, animals braying, drums thudding in some distant procession. You step off and are immediately jostled into the pulse of the city. Your first stop, the Temple of Karnak. Calling it big is like calling the Sahara sandy. It's a forest of columns, each wider than a tree trunk carved with hieroglyphs that swirl in the morning light. Priests in spotless linen glide between altars carrying incense and sacred water. You catch the edge of a ritual drums, chants the flicker of oil lamps as smoke snakes upward. Your guide whispers that the temple is dedicated to Amun-Ra, king of the gods. But in classic Egyptian fashion, Amun is fused with Ra, and sometimes with Min, and occasionally merged into even more complicated theological mashups. Historians still argue whether the people truly grasped these fusions, or if they were more political than spiritual. You tiptoe past a statue so tall you nearly fall backward looking up at it. It's made of granite dragged from Aswan miles to the south. You marvel at how it got here. Then remember, they didn't have wheels. Quirky fact, the high priest of Amun at Thebes was often more powerful than the pharaoh himself. At one point in the New Kingdom, the priesthood controlled more land and wealth than the crown. So yeah, divine real estate was kind of a big deal. Outside the temple, the city is alive. Merchants shout over one another in the bazaar. You see stalls selling amulets, dyed cloth, dried fish, beer jars, and yes, makeup. One woman demonstrates how to grind malachite into green eye paint, while another slathers a customer in scented unguents. You try to decline, but your guide raises an eyebrow, and suddenly you smell like crushed lotus and cedar oil. You wander through residential alleys next narrow lanes lined with whitewashed mud brick homes. Children dart past, playing a game with pebbles and sticks. A man sits weaving rope. A scribe dabs ink on a palm scroll, muttering to himself. Someone invites you into a garden villa, a luxurious home of a wealthy noble. Inside, the floors are tiled, the walls painted with hunting scenes, and a pool reflects a row of date palms. Slaves move silently with platters of fruit and wine. The lady of the house greets you with that cool, unreadable nobility you've seen in tomb paintings. She gestures toward her pet monkey. It's wearing a gold collar. You try not to stare, but the peace doesn't last. Soon a tax collector arrives. He's got a scroll and a sneer. The servants freeze. The nobleman bows slightly, but doesn't smile. The collector points to the date trees. Apparently, there's a new levy on dried fruit. You slip away before someone asks for your name. By midday, the market district has turned rowdy. A storyteller recites from the tale of the shipwrecked sailor, gesturing wildly as a small crowd claps and laughs. He finishes with a twist involving a talking serpent god, and you join the applause even if you missed most of the middle. There's a moment of calm as you climb a hill overlooking the river. From here, Thebes spreads like a painted scroll, temples, gardens, courtyards all baked golden by the sun. You take a sip of sweet beer from a clay jug and breathe it in. And then you're called into court. Apparently foreigners need papers. You try to explain you're just passing through, but this gets you nowhere. The scribes start jotting things down in ink on sheets of papyrus as a guard eyes your sandals suspiciously. You're ushered into a side chamber of the local magistrate. Now here's where ancient justice gets tricky. Egyptian law was more about restoration than punishment. There were no lawyers, no juries. The goal was to restore balance, may it through apologies, repayment, or sometimes a beating. Fortunately, you're just a curiosity, and after some discussion and a few silver trinkets, which you definitely didn't have this morning, you're released. Historians still debate whether the legal system was truly fair or mostly manipulated by elites. Records suggest both justice and corruption flourished under the same sun. As the day wanes, you find a quiet bench near a canal. Someone plays a harp nearby. The sky shifts to dusky lavender. A row of palm trees silhouettes against the setting sun, their reflections trembling in the water. And for a brief moment you understand. Egypt isn't just a place. It's rhythm and ritual. It's incense and irrigation. It's both cruel and magnificent. And tomorrow you'll be on the move again. But for now, you just sit and listen to the harp. You wake to the hiss of wind pushing across the desert plains. Thebes is behind you now, a dream of temples and taxmen fading in the morning light. Today you'll cross into the Valley of the Kings, that scorching rock-carved graveyard where Egypt's greatest pharaohs dared to cheat death. Your guide, a lean man with teeth like tumbled limestone, offers you a reed hat and a warning. Stay on the path, and don't touch the walls. The sun hasn't risen far, but already the heat presses down like a thick, invisible blanket. The valley is eerie, no trees, no shade, just the silent watch of stone cliffs and a dirt path winding between them. You step carefully, your sandals crunching gravel that hasn't moved in 1,000 years. And then suddenly there it is, a tomb mouth carved right into the rock. Not the grand pyramids of Giza, those were so old kingdom. In this new kingdom site, pharaohs opted for hidden tombs, sealed tight, and buried deep, far from prying eyes and grave robbers. You duck into the first one, torchlight flickering off painted walls. Inside, it's a riot of color. Blue, ochre, crimson, gold, all still glowing like they were painted last week. Gods parade in profile across the walls, Anubis, Osiris, Nut. Hieroglyphs snake around door frames. One figure holds an ankh, the symbol of life, toward you. You wonder if it's a blessing or a warning. Historians still argue whether the elaborate Book of the Dead spells painted here were literal instructions for the afterlife or more of a political PR campaign. Regardless, every inch of these corridors whispers, "We're not gone. We're just waiting." You descend deeper steps carved by hands long since turned to dust. The air is thick and strange, like time has pooled here and refuses to evaporate. In the burial chamber lies a giant stone sarcophagus, its corners etched with protective spells. You half expect it to shift. Quirky fact: to protect tombs from looters, builders sometimes created fake passageways, booby traps, or even curses. One inscription in a nearby tomb reads, "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs this tomb." Probably a bluff, but you take 3 steps back just in case. Back outside, the sun is higher now, bouncing off the cliffs like a mirror. You're sweating through your linen tunic. Your guide offers you a sip from a cool goatskin flask. You don't ask what's in it. You just drink. Later, you're taken to a workers' village, Deir el Medina, home to the artisans who painted those tombs. These were skilled laborers, well-fed, literate, and unionized. Their small homes cluster along a dusty path, their walls still bearing graffiti. One sketch shows a cat playing a harp, another a boss being insulted in hieroglyphs. You grin. Bureaucratic sass is timeless. You chat with a scribe who explains how their crew was paid in bread, beer, fish, and oil. And when payment was late, they went on strike. Egypt's first recorded labor strike, actually. A sleepy revolution with picket lines and all. You move on. As the afternoon stretches, you catch sight of a grand funeral procession in the distance. It's not for a pharaoh, but a noble, yet still a grand affair. The body wrapped in linen lies atop a sled pulled by oxen. Women wail rhythmically. Priests in jackal masks walk ahead, shaking incense over the path. The desert wind carries the smell of myrrh and roasted grain. A flute plays a slow, trembling tune. You feel something shift in your chest. Here, death isn't an end, it's a crossing. A carefully choreographed journey through Duat, the underworld, past tests and terrors, until the heart is weighed. The weighing of the heart, your final exam. You remember the image, a scale. On one side, your heart. On the other, a feather, the feather of truth. If the heart is heavier, weighed down by sin, it's devoured by Amit, the crocodile lion-hippo hybrid. No afterlife, just deletion. You swallow hard. But if your heart is light, you pass into the field of reeds, a sun-drenched paradise. Endless fields, eternal peace, good fishing. You sit on a dune as the funeral fades into the horizon. It's quiet again, and suddenly you realize something: you wouldn't have made it. Not just because of the sand fleas or the heat or the weird fermented beer, but because ancient Egypt demanded disciplined belief and an intimacy with death that most modern minds resist. You'd have failed the feather test not out of malice but out of confusion. You wouldn't have known the rules, and you wouldn't have had time to learn them. Still, as the day ends, there's a strange peace in that thought. Egypt wasn't meant to be easy. It was meant to last. You lie back in the sand watching stars emerge one by one. They believed the stars were souls of the dead sailing across the sky in Ra's boat. And tonight, you feel yourself drifting with them. Wind down final 300 words. The sand is cool now beneath your back, the night sky arching overhead in a wash of soft indigo and gold. Every breath you take pulls in the memory of sun-warmed limestone, bitter herbs, and distant smoke from a torch that burned out long ago. The sharp edges of the day begin to blur. The noise of markets, the clamor of tomb builders, even the rustle of papyrus scrolls, all of it melts into a hush. You feel your body sinking, not uncomfortably, but gently, like being pulled into the Nile on a quiet, moonlit current. Your muscles remember the walk through temple courts. Your ears still echo with the chant of priests, the hush of ancient spells whispered against time. The world of pharaohs and farmers, gods and grave robbers slips further away with each heartbeat, and now the tomb doors are closing softly behind you. The paintings fade to darkness. The echoes settle, but something lingers, a flicker of oil lamp light. A name carved in stone. A voice you almost understand speaking from 3,000 years ago. Let it drift. Let your breath match the rhythm of the desert wind, slow, even steady. Let your thoughts scatter like grains of sand in the breeze. You've walked far enough for one night. You've touched the Nile, watched the stars Ra carries, and learned the weight of your own heart. So now just rest. Float through the field of reeds, weightless, fearless, and warm. You've made it through a day in ancient Egypt, and somehow, you're still here. Sleep well. End of script. Sweet dreams.